The contract felt like ice in Sophia Rivera's trembling hands as she stared at the impossible words printed in legal black ink. Marriage. 1 year, $20 million. This has to be a joke, she whispered, her voice barely audible above. The gentle hum of the luxury hotel suite's air conditioning. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly, its waves catching the late afternoon sun like scattered diamonds. But Sophia couldn't appreciate the beauty, not when her entire world had just been turned upside down. Gabriel Montenegro stood with his back to her, his broad shoulders rigid beneath an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. At 34, he commanded every room he entered, his presence both magnetic and intimidating. Dark hair perfectly styled, green eyes that seemed to see through every pretense, and a jaw that could have been carved from marble. He was everything Sophia had never imagined herself being attracted to, yet something about his quiet intensity made her pulse quicken despite her fear. "I assure you, Miss Rivera, this is entirely serious." His voice carried a slight accent, cultured and smooth like aged whiskey. When he turned to face her, those piercing eyes held no warmth, only calculated determination. "My legal team has reviewed every clause. The arrangement is binding and beneficial to both parties." Sophia's fingers tightened on the papers. "Beneficial? You want to buy me like some medieval transaction? How is that beneficial to anyone?" A muscle twitched. "In Gabriel's jaw? Your family's bakery will close within the week without intervention. Your father's fishing business is already bankrupt. Your mother's medical bills from her recent surgery are mounting daily. I'm offering a solution that preserves your family's dignity while meeting my own pressing needs." The brutal honesty hit like a physical blow. Sophia had known their financial situation was desperate, but hearing it laid out so clinically made her stomach churn. She set the contract on the marble coffee table and stood, pacing to the window. Below, tourists strolled along the beach, where she'd spent countless hours collecting shells and dreaming of becoming a marine biologist. Those dreams felt impossibly far away now. "Why me?" she asked, without turning around. "Surely a man of your wealth and position could find someone more suitable. Someone who actually wants to marry you." Gabriel's reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. Up close, she could see the faint lines around his eyes, evidence of sleepless nights and enormous responsibility. "I've had my share of women who wanted to marry my bank account. What I need is someone genuine, someone who won't mistake this arrangement for romance. Someone who has her own dreams and won't try to reshape mine." "And you think I'm that someone?" Sophia turned to face him, surprised by how close he stood. The scent of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, made her senses spin. "You don't know anything about me. I know you've maintained a 4.0 GPA while working 2 part-time jobs to pay for university. I know you volunteer at the Marine Rescue Center every weekend. I know you've never asked your parents for money, even when your textbooks cost more than they could afford." Gabriel's voice softened slightly. "I know you're the kind of person who would sacrifice her own happiness to save her family." The observation stung because it was true. Sophia had always been the responsible one, the daughter who studied hard and never caused trouble. While her friends partied and dated, she'd focused on her future, determined to break her family's. A cycle of financial struggle through education and hard work. Now that very sense of responsibility was being used against her. "This grandfather's will of yours," she said, buying time to think. "Tell me about it." Gabriel moved away, creating distance that somehow made the spacious suite feel smaller. Eduardo Montenegro believed that unmarried men made poor leaders. He wrote provisions into his will requiring me to be married before my 35th birthday, or forfeit control of the Montenegro Foundation. I have exactly 23 days. And the foundation matters to you. It's my life's work. We fund marine conservation projects, educational scholarships, disaster relief efforts across Latin America. Last year alone, we provided clean water, access to 40,000 people. His voice carried genuine passion for the first time. "My grandfather may have had archaic ideas about marriage, but he built something worth preserving." Sophia studied his profile as he gazed out at the ocean. There was more to Gabriel Montenegro than the cold businessman facade he presented. She could see it in the way his expression softened when he spoke about the foundation's work, in the slight tremor in his hands that suggested this arrangement wasn't as easy for him as he wanted her to believe. "What would you expect from me?" she asked quietly. "As your wife?" Gabriel turned back to her, his green eyes serious. "Public appearances when necessary. Shared living arrangements to satisfy legal requirements. Discretion about the nature of our arrangement." Paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I would never pressure you for intimacy, Sophia. I would have to develop naturally, if at all." The use of her first name sent an unexpected shiver through her. Something in the way he said it, with careful pronunciation and genuine respect, made her feel seen rather than objectified. And after the year, a generous divorce settlement. Full funding for your graduate studies, your family's debts permanently cleared. Gabriel retrieved a folder from his briefcase and handed it to her. "I've taken the liberty of researching marine biology programs. Stanford has an excellent oceanography department." Sophia opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were brochures for some of the world's most prestigious marine science programs, complete with application deadlines and scholarship information. The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught her off guard. "You did all this without knowing if I'd say yes? Call it calculated optimism?" Gabriel's mouth curved in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "I researched you thoroughly, Sophia. Know you're practical above all else. This arrangement solves both our problems with minimal emotional complications." Minimal emotional complications. She repeated the phrase, testing how it felt on her tongue. "Is that how you see marriage? As a business transaction?" Something flickered across Gabriel's features, too quick to interpret. "I've learned that mixing business with emotions leads to poor decisions and broken hearts. This way we both know exactly what we're getting." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions and carefully guarded vulnerabilities. Outside, the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold. Sophia had always found sunsets comforting, but this one felt like the end of everything she'd known about herself and her future. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course. But I should mention that time is a luxury neither of us has in abundance." Gabriel moved to his desk and withdrew a cashier's check. "This is for your mother's upcoming surgery. Consider it a gesture of good faith, regardless of your decision." Sophia stared at the check. The amount was more money than her family had ever seen at once, enough to cover not just the surgery but months of recovery time, prescription medications, follow-up appointments. Her mother could finally get the treatment she needed without the family sinking deeper into debt. "This feels like bribery," she whispered. "It's an investment in someone I hope to call family." Gabriel's voice was gentle but firm. "Your mother's health shouldn't depend on your decision about our arrangement." The kindness in the gesture undermined every defense Sophia had built against him. She'd expected cold calculation, not genuine care for her family's well-being. It made him human in a way that terrified her, because it complicated everything. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," she said, tucking the check into her purse with hands that barely functioned. Gabriel nodded formally. "My driver will take you home." And Sophia. She paused at the door, not trusting herself to look back. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know that I respect your intelligence and your courage. Not many people would even consider such an arrangement to save their family." Walking through the hotel lobby felt like moving through a dream. Other guests chatted and laughed, living normal lives unencumbered by impossible choices. Sophia envied their simplicity even as she tried to process the magnitude of what Gabriel had offered her. The ride home passed in a blur of coastal scenery and internal turmoil. Her family's small house came into view just as the first stars began appearing in the darkening sky. Through the kitchen window, she could see her parents moving about, probably preparing dinner with whatever ingredients they could afford. They had no idea that their daughter held the power to change their lives forever. But the power came with a price that might cost Sophia everything she'd ever dreamed of becoming. As Gabriel's car disappeared into the night, Sophia stood on her front porch and wondered if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or if sometimes the biggest mistakes were the only way to save the people you loved most. The morning sun streamed through Sophia's bedroom window, but she had been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wrestling with a decision that would reshape her entire existence. The cashier's check lay on her nightstand, its presence, both a blessing and a burden she could barely comprehend. Downstairs, she could hear her mother moving carefully around the kitchen, her steps slower than usual due to the pain that had been getting progressively worse, the surgery they couldn't afford was scheduled for next week, a date that hung over the family like a storm cloud. Without it, the doctors had warned, her condition would only deteriorate. Sophia dressed quietly and made her way to the beach, needing the ocean's rhythm to calm her racing thoughts. The familiar path through the dunes felt different this morning, as if she were already saying goodbye to the girl who had walked it countless times before. She found her favorite spot on the rocks, where she'd spent hours studying marine life and dreaming of her future. The tide pools at her feet teemed with creatures adapted to harsh conditions, surviving in the space between land and sea. Like her, they existed in the margins, making the best of an environment that was neither fully one thing nor another. "I thought I might find you here." Sophia turned to see her best friend Catalina approaching, her dark hair whipping in the salt breeze. They'd known each other since childhood, shared every secret and dream. If anyone could help her make sense of this impossible situation, it would be Cat. "I heard Gabriel Montenegro came to see you last night," Catalina said, settling beside her on the rocks. "The whole town's buzzing about it. Rich men don't usually make house calls in neighborhoods like ours. He made me an offer." Sophia's voice sounded hollow even to her own ears, the kind that changes everything. Catalina studied her friend's face with growing concern. "What kind of offer?" Sophia pulled the check from her pocket and handed it over. Catalina's eyes widened as she read the amount, her mouth falling open in shock. "This is for your mom's surgery, isn't it? But what does he want in return?" "Marriage." The word fell between them like a stone into still water. "A year-long arrangement to satisfy the terms of his grandfather's will. In exchange, he'll pay all our family's debts and fund my education through graduate school." Catalina was quiet for a long moment, processing the enormity of what her friend had just revealed. "Marriage to a man you don't love." "Marriage to a man I don't even know," Sophia corrected. "He was perfectly clear that this is a business arrangement. No emotions, no complications. Just a legal contract between two people solving each other's problems, and you're actually considering it?" It wasn't a question. Catalina knew Sophia too well, could read the conflict written across her features. They sat in silence, watching pelicans dive for fish in the waters beyond the breakers. "My mom needs that surgery, Cat. Dad's pride is already broken from losing the fishing business. If they lose the house and the bakery too, it'll destroy them completely." Sophia's voice cracked with the weight of responsibility she'd carried for too long. "I'm 21 years old and I hold my family's entire future in my hands. But what about your future? Your dreams of becoming a marine biologist, studying coral reefs, maybe working for one of those research stations in Hawaii." Catalina's eyes filled with tears she was trying not to shed. "You've wanted that since we were 12 years old. You promised to fund graduate school. I could still pursue marine biology, just through a different path. As his wife," Catalina's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Sophia, this isn't some romantic novel where the cold businessman falls in love with the innocent girl he married. For convenience, this is your real life. You think I don't know that?" Sophia snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry. I just don't know what else to do. If I say no, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have saved them, and chose not to." Catalina reached for her friend's hand. "And if you say yes, then I'll spend the rest of my life wondering who I might have been if I'd chosen differently." They were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Sophia looked up to see Gabriel Montenegro walking across the sand toward them, his expensive shoes and tailored pants incongruous against the wild beauty of the beach. Even dressed down in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt, he carried himself with an authority that made him impossible to ignore. "It's Miss Rivera. I hope I'm not intruding." His voice was carefully polite, but Sophia caught something uncertain in his expression. "I wanted to speak with you before you made your decision." Catalina squeezed Sophia's hand and stood, I should go. Call me later. At Sophia's nod, she headed back toward town, but not before giving Gabriel a look that clearly communicated her protective instincts. Gabriel waited until they were alone before settling onto the rocks beside Sophia, maintaining a respectful distance. Up close, she could see that he looked tired, as if he'd slept as poorly as she had. Second thoughts? She asked. About the arrangement? No, about the impact on your life. Many. Gabriel picked up a smooth stone and turned it over in his hands. I realized last night that I've been approaching this like any other business deal. But you're not a commodity to be acquired. The admission surprised her. Then why go through with it? Because despite my reservations about the method, the Foundation's work is too important to sacrifice. But I want to make sure you understand exactly what you'd be agreeing to. Gabriel looked out at the horizon, his profile etched against the morning sky. My life isn't easy, Sophia. I work 18-hour days, travel constantly, attend events where I'm expected to be charming while people try to separate me from my money. The press follows my every move, looking for scandal. You trying to talk me out of it? I'm trying to give you the complete picture. Gabriel turned to face her, his green eyes intense. If you agree to this marriage, you'll be thrust into a world you're not prepared for. Photographers will follow you to the grocery store, society. Women will judge your clothes, your background, your worthiness to be my wife. Every mistake you make will be magnified and dissected in tabloids. The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. Sophia had grown up in a small town, where everyone knew everyone, but that was different from the kind of scrutiny Gabriel was describing. Why are you telling me this? Yesterday you seemed determined to convince me. Yesterday I was focused on solving my problem. Today I'm thinking about the cost to you. Gabriel's voice softened. You're not like the women in my world, Sophia. You're genuine, kind, unaffected by wealth and status. That's exactly what I need. But it's also what will make this hardest for you. They sat in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. A seal surfaced in the water nearby, watching them with curious dark eyes before diving again. Sophia envied its freedom, its ability to disappear beneath the surface whenever the world above became too complicated. Tell me about your family, she said suddenly. The real story, not the sanitized version. Gabriel seemed surprised by the request. What do you want to know? Everything. If I'm going to marry you, even in name only, I should understand who you really are. Gabriel was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of old pain. My parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. They were coming home from a charity event, driving through a storm because my father refused to spend the night in a hotel. Said he wanted to be home for breakfast with my mother, like he had every Sunday for 30 years. Gabriel's hands stilled on the stone he'd been rolling between his palms. If they'd stayed in the city, they'd still be alive. The raw honesty in his voice made Sophia's chest tighten. I'm sorry. They were everything I'm not. Warm, spontaneous, deeply in love after 3 decades of marriage. They taught me that business success means nothing without people to share it with. Gabriel's smile was bitter. I've built an empire, but I eat dinner alone every night in apartments that feel more like hotels. Is that why you've never married? Fear of loss, partly. Also because every woman I've dated was more interested in the Montenegro name than in me. Gabriel looked at her with something that might have been vulnerability. At least with you, I know where I stand. You're marrying me despite my wealth, not because of it. The observation hit closer to the truth than Sophia was comfortable admitting. Gabriel Montenegro, the billionaire, intimidated her. But Gabriel, the man sitting beside her, sharing his grief and loneliness, stirred something unexpected in her chest. What would our life together actually look like? She asked. At a day-to-day, I mean. I have homes in San Francisco, New York, and here in California. You could choose where you'd be most comfortable. I travel frequently for business, so you'd have privacy and independence. Gabriel paused. I know this arrangement asks you to give up the chance for real love, Sophia. I can't promise to fill that void in your life. Maybe I'm not looking for love, she said, surprising herself with the words. Maybe I'm looking for purpose. Gabriel studied her face. What do you mean? Mention that the foundation funds? Marine conservation projects. What if this marriage gave me access to work I could never afford to pursue otherwise? What if instead of just being your convenient wife, I could actually contribute to something meaningful? For the first time since she'd met him, Gabriel's expression was purely genuine, guarded by the careful control he maintained. You'd want to be involved in the foundation's work, if you'd let me? I may not have a degree yet, but I know more about marine ecosystems than most people. I've been studying them my entire life, just from a different perspective than university researchers. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. There's a project we've been funding in the Pacific. Team studying coral reef restoration after bleaching events. They need someone with practical field experience, someone who understands marine life from observation rather than just theory. Someone like me? Someone exactly like you. Gabriel's voice carried a note of excitement she hadn't heard before. Sophia, if you agreed to this marriage, you wouldn't just be solving my legal problem. You could be part of work that actually matters. Possibilities sent a thrill of anticipation through her. Everything she'd ever dreamed of studying, funded and supported at the highest levels. It wouldn't be the traditional path she'd planned, but it might lead somewhere even better. I need to know something, she said. It's distance you're promising. This business-only arrangement. What if that changes? What if being married, even in name, creates feelings neither of us expected? Gabriel's jaw tightened. That's a risk I'm prepared to take. But are you prepared to act on it? Or would you always see me as the girl you bought to solve a problem? The question hung between them like a challenge. Gabriel looked at her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken, as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time. I think, he said slowly, that you're far more dangerous to my equilibrium than I initially calculated. Before Sophia could ask what he meant, Gabriel stood and extended his hand to help her up. The touch sent electricity through her skin, a reaction she definitely hadn't expected. Take another day to think about it, he said. But know this, if you say yes, I'll do everything in my power to make sure you never regret choosing to save your family, even if it means risking my own carefully constructed walls. As Gabriel walked away across the sand, Sophia touched her hand where his had been and realized that the most dangerous thing about this arrangement might not be what she'd be giving up. It might be what she'd be opening herself up to discover. The civil ceremony took place at sunset on the terrace of Gabriel's cliffside estate. With only immediate family and 2 witnesses present, Sophia had imagined this moment countless times throughout her childhood. But never like this, standing in a simple white dress borrowed from Catalina, promising forever to a man she'd known for exactly 1 week. Gabriel looked devastating in his charcoal gray suit, his dark hair catching the golden light as he repeated vows that were legally binding but emotionally hollow. When it came time to kiss the bride, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead instead. A gesture both tender and carefully distant. Now comes the hard part, he murmured against her skin. And Sophia knew he wasn't talking about the reception. The small gathering moved inside for dinner, where Gabriel's housekeeper had prepared a feast that would have fed twice their number. Sophia's parents seemed overwhelmed by the elegance of their surroundings, her mother touching everything with reverent fingers, while her father maintained the stoic expression he wore when trying not to show emotion. 2 new beginnings. Gabriel raised his glass of champagne, his eyes finding Sophia's across the table. And 2 partnerships that benefit everyone involved. The toast felt more like a business meeting than a wedding celebration, but Sophia forced a smile and sipped the expensive champagne that tasted like nothing at all. Everything about this day felt surreal, as if she were watching someone else's life unfold from a distance. After dinner, her parents returned to their hotel room, leaving the newlyweds alone in Gabriel's sprawling home. The silence felt deafening. After the polite conversation they'd maintained all evening, "I've prepared the guest suite for you," Gabriel said, leading her up a curved staircase lined with original artwork. "It has its own bathroom and sitting area. You'll have complete privacy." The room he showed her was larger than her entire childhood. Bedroom decorated in soft blues and grays that reminded her of the ocean. French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking the coast, and the sound of waves far below provided a comforting soundtrack. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Nate, you." Gabriel lingered in the doorway, his hands in his pockets. For a moment, he looked younger, less certain. "This arrangement is new territory for both of us. If you need anything, or if you're uncomfortable with any aspect of our situation, I want you to tell me immediately." "What about you?" Sophia asked. "What if you're the one who's uncomfortable?" Something flickered across Gabriel's features. "I'm not sure comfort was ever part of the equation for me." After he left, Sophia sat on the plush bed and tried to process the magnitude of what had just happened. She was married, to a man who was essentially a stranger, in a house that cost more than her hometown's entire annual budget. The weight of her new reality settled around her like a heavy coat. She unpacked her few belongings into the enormous walk-in closet, her modest wardrobe looking lost among the empty hangers. Tomorrow, Gabriel had mentioned, a stylist would come to help her shop for appropriate clothes. Another reminder that everything about her old life would need to be carefully curated to fit her new role. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by unfamiliar sounds and the persistent awareness that her husband was somewhere in this vast house, probably working late into the night as he'd warned her he did. Husband, the word felt foreign, like trying to speak a language she'd never learned. The next morning, Sophia woke to find a note slipped under her door, along with a credit card bearing her new name, Mrs. Gabriel Montenegro. The name looked strange, written in elegant script, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. "Good morning, Mrs. Montenegro." Gabriel's housekeeper, Alina, greeted her warmly in the kitchen. "Mr. Montenegro asked me to tell you he had an early meeting but will be back this afternoon. He left instructions for your shopping appointment." The morning passed in a blur of measurements and fabric swatches as a team of stylists transformed Sophia's wardrobe. Cocktail dresses, business suits, casual wear that cost more than her family's monthly grocery budget. Everything carefully chosen to project the image of a successful businessman's wife. "You have excellent bone structure," the lead stylist commented, pinning a stunning navy dress. Mr. Montenegro chose well. The comment stung, reducing their marriage to an aesthetic choice rather than a partnership. But Sophia forced a smile and tried on dress after dress. Playing the role of grateful new bride, Gabriel returned that afternoon to find her reading on the terrace, having changed back into her own simple sundress. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie, but still looked formal compared to her casual appearance. "How did the shopping go?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Expensive," Sophia replied. "I could have bought a car with what we spent." "On shoes alone?" Gabriel's mouth quirked upward. "Image is unfortunately part of the job. We have several events coming up where you'll need to look the part. The part of loving wife. The part of successful woman who chose to marry me," Gabriel corrected. "There's a difference." Sophia studied his face, trying to read the emotions he kept so carefully controlled. "Is there? 'Cause from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm being turned into someone I'm not to fulfill a role in your life." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. "Would you prefer to be yourself and have photographers tear apart every perceived flaw? 'Cause that's the alternative, Sophia, is the world. A live-in doesn't allow for authenticity. Then why live in it?" The question seemed to catch Gabriel off guard. He looked out at the ocean, his jaw tight, because walking away would mean abandoning work that saves lives. The foundation isn't just a tax shelter or a vanity project. It's infrastructure, education, medical care for people who have nothing, and comfort is a small price to pay for that impact. The passion in his voice reminded Sophia why she'd agreed to this arrangement. Gabriel Montenegro might be cold and controlled, but his dedication to helping others was genuine. "Tell me about the Coral Reef project," she said, "the one you mentioned." Gabriel's posture shifted, becoming more animated. "It's in the Maldives. A team of marine biologists working to develop new techniques for coral restoration after bleaching events. The traditional methods aren't keeping pace with climate change damage. And you think I could contribute? I think you see marine ecosystems differently than researchers who've only studied them in labs. Your field experience could provide insights they're missing." Gabriel leaned forward, There's a conference next month in Miami. Marine conservation specialists from around the world. If you're serious about being involved, it would be an excellent place to start. The prospect sent excitement coursing through Sophia's veins. Take me with you. As my wife, you'd be expected to attend such events anyway. But yes, I'd take you as my partner in the foundation's work. Partner. The word carried more weight than husband somehow, implying mutual respect and shared purpose, rather than legal convenience. What would I need to do to prepare? Gabriel smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. Be yourself. Your instincts about marine life are better than half the PhD holders who will be there. They spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the foundation's various projects, Gabriel's reserve gradually melting as he shared his passion for the work. Sophia found herself drawn not just to the conservation efforts, but to this version of her husband, engaged, thoughtful, genuinely excited about making a difference. As evening approached, Gabriel excused himself to make business calls, leaving Sophia alone with her thoughts. She walked through the house, exploring rooms she hadn't seen before. His home office drew her attention, its walls lined with photographs from foundation projects around the world. Children at new schools, families with access to clean water, researchers conducting fieldwork in pristine environments. Admiring my ego wall? Gabriel's voice came from behind her. Sophia turned to find him watching her from the doorway. These aren't ego shots. These are people whose lives you've changed. The foundation changed their lives. I just signed the checks. Diminish what you do, Sophia said firmly. Yes, matters. It's real impact, not just charity for tax benefits. Gabriel stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. Most people in my position use philanthropy as social currency. Attend galas, make speeches, get their names on buildings. But not you. I prefer results to recognition. Gabriel moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Although I have to admit, having someone who understands that motivation is refreshing. Their eyes met in the reflection of the window, and Sophia felt something shift between them. The careful distance Gabriel had maintained was still there, but underneath it was a growing awareness that their arrangement might be more complicated than either had anticipated. Gabriel, she said softly, what happens if this stops feeling like business? He turned to face her fully, his green eyes intense. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. What? And if it already has? The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Neither was ready to fully explore. Gabriel reached up and touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with surprising tenderness. Then we're both in more trouble than we bargained. 4, he said quietly. Before Sophia could respond, Gabriel's phone rang, shattering the moment. He stepped away to answer it, his expression closing off as he returned to business mode. But Sophia had seen something in his eyes in that unguarded moment. Something that made her pulse race and her carefully maintained emotional distance feel suddenly fragile. Their marriage of convenience was becoming something else entirely, whether they were ready for it or not. 3 months into their marriage, Sophia stood in the Miami Conference Center surrounded by the world's leading marine biologists, her heart pounding as she prepared to present her findings on coastal ecosystem recovery. The research she'd been conducting through the Montenegro Foundation had yielded unexpected results. Challenging conventional wisdom about natural habitat restoration, Gabriel watched from the back of the room, his presence both comforting and nerve-wracking. Over the past few months, their relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated. What started as careful coexistence had become genuine partnership, then friendship, and now something deeper that neither dared name. Mrs. Montenegro, the moderator, introduced her. We'll be presenting research on indigenous restoration techniques and their effectiveness compared to current scientific methods. Sophia took the stage, her confidence growing as she began discussing her work. The audience, initially skeptical of the young woman with no formal graduate training, grew increasingly engaged as she presented data that contradicted decades of accepted practice. Traditional scientific approaches focus on replicating ideal laboratory conditions in natural environments, she explained, clicking through photographs of thriving coral reefs. But ecosystems don't function in isolation. By incorporating indigenous knowledge about natural cycles and symbiotic relationships, we've achieved restoration success rates 30% higher than conventional methods. Questions flew from the audience, challenging and probing. Answered each one with growing confidence, her passion for the subject overriding any lingering nervousness. When she finally left the stage to sustained applause, Gabriel was waiting in the wings with an expression of pure pride. "That was extraordinary," he said, his voice warm with genuine admiration. "You just changed the conversation about marine conservation." The afternoon reception buzzed with excitement as researchers approached Sophia to discuss her work. She found herself at the center of animated conversations about funding, collaboration, and future projects. For the first time since agreeing to marry Gabriel, she felt like herself not his convenient wife, but Dr. Sophia Rivera Montenegro, marine researcher in her own right. "Your husband seems very proud," commented Dr. Patricia Wells, a renowned oceanographer from Woods Hole. "It's refreshing to see a couple who share professional passions." Sophia glanced across the room to where Gabriel was deep in conversation with potential foundation partners. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled, the expression private and intimate despite the crowded room. "Yes," Sophia heard herself say, "he is." Later that evening, they walked along Miami Beach, the warm sand beneath their feet and the sound of waves providing a soundtrack to their conversation. Sophia had shed her heels and hiked up her dress, while Gabriel had rolled up his sleeves and loosened his tie. "I've never seen you like that before," Gabriel said, his voice thoughtful, completely in your element, commanding that room full of experts who probably assumed you didn't belong there. "I didn't think I belonged there either," Sophia admitted. 6 months ago, I was collecting shells on a beach in a small town. Now I'm presenting research to people I've read about in journals. You've always belonged in rooms like that. You just needed the opportunity to prove it." Gabriel stopped walking and turned to face her. "Sophia, what you did today wasn't just impressive professionally. It was brave. You stood up to some of the most established minds in marine science and made them reconsider everything they thought they knew." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without the foundation's support. Without you believing I had something valuable to contribute. I didn't give you the intelligence or the insights. I just provided funding and access." Gabriel reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch sending familiar electricity through her skin. "The work, the courage, the brilliance, that's all you." They stood close enough that Sophia could see the flecks of gold. In Gabriel's green eyes could feel the warmth radiating from his body. The careful distance they'd maintained was crumbling, replaced by something that felt inevitable and terrifying. "Gabriel," she whispered, not sure what she wanted to say, but needing to break the tension building between them. "I know," he said softly. "This wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to happen." Instead of answering, Gabriel cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Not the careful, dutiful kiss of their wedding ceremony, but something real, and desperate, and full of months of suppressed longing. Sophia melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal intensity. When they finally broke apart, they both were breathing hard, the air between them crackling with electricity. "That," Gabriel said, resting his forehead against hers, "that wasn't supposed to happen, but it did." Sophia's voice was barely audible above the sound of the waves. "And I don't want to pretend it didn't." Gabriel's hands tightened on her face. "Sophia, if we cross this line, there's no going back. Our arrangement, the clear boundaries we set, maybe I don't want boundaries anymore." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Maybe I want to see what happens if we stop pretending this is just business." Gabriel searched her face. "Looking for any sign of uncertainty?" "You don't know what you're asking. My world, my life, it's complicated in ways you can't imagine." "Then uncomplicate it," Sophia challenged. "Or at least let me decide for myself what I can handle." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, internal struggle playing out across his features. Finally, he took her hand and led her back toward their hotel. "There's something you need to know," he said as they walked. "Hey, something I should have told you months ago." Seriousness in his tone made Sophia's stomach clench with worry. "What is it?" The marriage clause in my grandfather's will, it's not the only condition. There's another requirement I didn't mention. They had reached the hotel lobby, but Gabriel steered them toward a quiet seating area away from other guests. His expression was pained, as if the words he needed to say physically hurt. "Tell me," Sophia said, settling beside him on a plush sofa. "The will requires that I produce an heir within 2 years of marriage, or the foundation reverts to a board of trustees, who will dismantle everything we've built." Gabriel's voice was carefully controlled, but Sophia could see the tension in his jaw. "I didn't tell you because I thought I could find another way around it. But my lawyers have been working for months, and there's no loophole." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow in air. "You mean a child?" "Yes. You didn't think I had a right to know that when I agreed to marry you?" Sophia's voice rose with anger and betrayal. "You let me think this was a simple business arrangement when you knew it would eventually require something much more intimate. I was trying to protect you from an obligation I hoped I could resolve through legal channels." Gabriel's composure was cracking, revealing the desperation beneath. "I never intended for us to develop feelings for each other. I thought I could handle the legal requirements without involving you in that aspect." "Handle them how exactly?" Sophia stood, pacing away from him as the full implications sank in. "Were you planning to divorce me and marry someone else? Have an affair? Explain to me how you intended to produce an heir without my involvement." Gabriel's silence was answer enough. Sophia felt sick, realizing that despite the connection growing between them, Gabriel had been planning their eventual separation all along. "You were always going to leave me," she said quietly.
Oh.
"Even after everything we've shared? Even after tonight?" "No." Gabriel stood and reached for her, but she stepped back. "Sophia, what's developed between us changes everything. Don't want to leave you. I don't want to marry anyone else or have children with someone else, but I also can't ask you to what? Have your child. Build a real marriage instead of this elaborate pretense." Sophia's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "You're right, Gabriel. You can't ask me that, because you already proved that you don't trust me enough to make my own choices about my own life. That's not fair." "Fair?" Sophia laughed bitterly. "Nothing about this situation is fair. But honesty might have made it bearable." Gabriel looked stricken, his careful control completely gone. "I was trying to spare you. You were trying to control the outcome without giving me agency in my own marriage." Sophia wiped away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts. "I thought we were becoming partners, Gabriel. Real partners who made decisions together. But you've been managing me like another business acquisition." The accusation hung between them, and Sophia could see from Gabriel's expression that her words had found their mark. He stood there looking lost, the powerful businessman facade stripped away to reveal someone who had no idea how to navigate genuine, emotional intimacy. "What do you want me to say?" he asked quietly. "That I'm sorry for trying to protect you? That I regret keeping this from you? Because I am sorry, Sophia. Sorrier than I know how to express." "I want you to trust me," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "I want you to stop making decisions about our lives without consulting me. And I want you to figure out whether you see me as your wife or your employee. Because I can't be both." She turned to leave, but Gabriel's voice stopped her. "Sophia, if I asked you to consider having my child, to make this marriage real in every sense, would you?" Sophia turned back to face him, her heart breaking at the vulnerability in his expression. 6 hours ago, I might have said yes. But now I don't know if I can trust that you're asking because you want a life with me, or because you need to fulfill a legal obligation." She walked away, leaving Gabriel alone in the hotel lobby with the wreckage of everything they'd been building together. As the elevator doors closed between them, Sophia caught one last glimpse of his face, devastated, lost, and completely alone. In her room, she sat on the bed and tried to process what had just happened. The man she'd been falling in love with had revealed that he'd been planning their separation from the beginning. Every moment of growing closeness, every shared laugh and meaningful conversation, had been shadowed by his assumption that their arrangement was temporary. But the worst part wasn't the deception itself. It was the realization that even now, even knowing the truth, A part of her still wanted to say yes to whatever future Gabriel was offering, because despite everything, she was in love with a man who might never see her as anything more than a convenient solution to his problems. Sophia spent the night staring out at the Miami skyline, her mind replaying every moment of the past 3 months, searching for signs she'd missed. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She found Gabriel on the hotel's private beach at sunrise, still wearing his clothes from the night before. He looked as if he hadn't slept either, his usually perfect appearance disheveled and his shoulders bowed with defeat. "I've been thinking," she said. Settling beside him on the sand without preamble, Gabriel didn't look at her, his gaze fixed. On the horizon, about leaving, about staying. The word surprised them both. Gabriel turned to face her, his eyes re-dimmed but hopeful, but not under the same terms as before. "What terms?" Sophia took a deep breath, gathering courage for what she needed to say. "I want full partnership in every decision that affects both of us. No more information withheld for my own protection. No more managing my reactions or controlling outcomes. Done." Gabriel's response was immediate. "What else?" "I want time. Real time to decide about children, about making this marriage authentic. Not because of legal deadlines or family pressure, but because we both genuinely want a life together." Gabriel nodded slowly. "How much time?" "However long it takes for us to figure out if what we feel for each other is real or just proximity. And shared goals." Sophia turned to face him fully. "Gabriel, last night wasn't just about the deception. It was about realizing that I've been as guilty of self-protection as you have. I've been calling this a business arrangement because it felt safer than admitting I was falling in love with my husband." Something shifted in Gabriel's expression. Hope replacing the resignation that had settled there. "You're falling in love with me?" "I'm terrified that I already have," Sophia admitted. "But I need to know that if we choose to build a real marriage, it's because we can't imagine life without each other, not because circumstances forced us together." Gabriel reached for her hand, his touch tentative, as if he were afraid she might pull away. "I've never been in love before, Sophia. I understood what I was feeling, but I kept telling myself it was gratitude or admiration or just physical attraction. But watching you walk away last night felt like losing something essential to my survival. That's not love, Gabriel. That's attachment." "Then tell me the difference." Sophia squeezed his hand, surprised by how much she wanted to help him understand. "Love means wanting someone's happiness even when it complicates your own life. It means trusting them with your vulnerabilities instead of trying to shield them from consequences. It means choosing them every day, not just when it's convenient or beneficial." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. "I've spent my entire adult life protecting myself from that kind of vulnerability. It seems impossibly risky." "It is risky. But the alternative is spending your life alone in beautiful houses, successful and safe, and never truly known by another." "Person, is that how you see me?" Gabriel's voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "Successful and safe and alone? I see someone who's afraid that if people really knew him, they'd find him insufficient." Sophia's honesty was gentle but unflinching. "Gabriel, you've been letting me see the real you for months. Your passion for the Foundation's work, your grief over your parents, your genuine desire to make a difference in the world. That man isn't insufficient. He's extraordinary." Gabriel's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "I don't know how to be the kind of husband you deserve, Sophia. I don't have models for healthy relationships or emotional intimacy. But I want to learn if you're willing to be patient with me." "What about the will's requirements?" Gabriel's jaw tightened with determination. "I'll find another way to meet the legal obligations. I won't let my grandfather's archaic demands dictate the timeline of our personal relationship. And if you can't find another way, then I'll choose you over the Foundation." Gabriel's voice was steady, certain. "I'll walk away from everything. If that's what it takes to build something real with you." The magnitude of what he was offering took Sophia's breath away. The Montenegro Foundation was Gabriel's life work, his parents' legacy, his grandfather's final gift to the world. For him to consider sacrificing it represented a fundamental shift in his priorities. "I won't let you do that," she said firmly. The foundation's work is too important, and you'd regret that choice eventually. We'll find another solution. We partners, remember. Real partners this time. Sophia stood and extended her hand to help Gabriel up. But first, I want you to court me properly. Gabriel looked confused. Court you? We're already married. Legally, yes. But I want you to woo me, Gabriel Montenegro. I want flowers and candlelit dinners and long conversations about our dreams and fears. I want you to convince me that you're choosing me, not just accepting me as a convenient solution. Gabriel's smile was the first genuine expression of joy Sophia had seen from him. I can do that, though I should warn you, I have no experience. With traditional courtship, then we'll figure it out together. Sophia leaned up and kissed him softly, a promise rather than a demand. One authentic moment at a time. They walked back toward the hotel hand in hand, both understanding that they were starting over on entirely new terms. The business arrangement that had brought them together was evolving into something neither had dared hope for when they'd signed those contracts 6 months ago. Over the following weeks, Gabriel threw himself into courtship with the same intensity he brought to everything else. Flowers appeared in Sophia's research lab with handwritten notes about specific marine conservation victories. He surprised her with a private screening of a documentary about coral reef restoration, complete with the filmmaker present to discuss her work. He learned to cook simple meals so they could have quiet dinners together instead of always dining at expensive restaurants. Most importantly, he talked about his childhood, his fears, his dreams for the foundation's future. He shared stories about his parents that he'd never told anyone, memories both painful and precious. In return, Sophia opened up about her own insecurities, her imposter syndrome in academic settings, her worry that she'd never be sophisticated enough for his world. I don't want you to be sophisticated, Gabriel said one evening as they walked along the beach near his house. I want you to stay exactly who you are. The woman who sees wonder in tide pools and speaks truth even when it's uncomfortable to hear. Even when that truth challenges you. Especially then. Gabriel stopped walking and pulled her into his arms. Sophia, you make me want to be better than I thought possible. Not more successful or more powerful, but more honest and more open and more willing to risk being hurt if it means truly connecting with another person. Gabriel, Sophia said softly, her heart full of love she was finally ready to acknowledge. I don't need more time to decide. I know what I want. What do you want? You a real marriage? A real partnership? And yes, eventually, a family. Not because your grandfather's will requires it, but because I can't imagine building a life with anyone else. Gabriel's kiss was full of promise and relief and a love that had been growing steadily despite their best efforts to keep it contained. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said, the words carrying the weight of someone who'd never said them before and meant them completely. I love your intelligence and your courage and the way you make me want to be worthy of your trust. I love you too, Sophia replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. All of you, even the parts that try to manage and protect and control. We'll figure out how to balance that with genuine partnership. And the foundation? The legal requirements? Sophia smiled, her expression mischievous. I have some ideas about that. First, I want you to take me home and show me exactly how much you love me. Gabriel's answering smile was full of heat and tenderness and promises they were finally ready to make and keep. They walked back to the house they were learning to call home, no longer business partners pretending at marriage, but husband and wife choosing each other with full knowledge of the risks and rewards that choice entailed. 6 months later, Sophia announced her pregnancy at a foundation gala, her hand resting on Gabriel's as they faced a room full of supporters and colleagues. The baby hadn't been conceived to satisfy legal requirements, but because two people who'd found unexpected love wanted to create something beautiful together. To new life, Gabriel raised his glass in a toast, his eyes never leaving his wife's face, and to the courage to choose love over safety. The room erupted in applause, but Sophia only heard Gabriel's voice. saw only his expression of complete adoration and gratitude for the woman who'd agreed to take a chance on an impossible arrangement and turned it into the foundation for a lifetime of authentic happiness. Their marriage had begun as a business transaction, but it had become something infinitely more valuable than either had dared hope for when they'd signed those original contracts. They'd found partnership, purpose, and a love that transformed them both into better versions of themselves. As Gabriel spun her around the dance floor later that evening, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Agreed to marry a stranger to save her family and ended up saving herself in the process. Discovering strength and capability she'd never known she possessed, and Gabriel had found something he'd never expected in his calculated arrangement. A woman who saw through his carefully constructed facades to the man beneath, who challenged him to be vulnerable and authentic, and ultimately more human than he'd ever allowed himself to be. Their story had begun with an impossible choice and a desperate bargain, but it was ending with the kind of love that made every sacrifice worthwhile, every risk worth taking, and every moment of uncertainty worth enduring for the promise of a lifetime spent growing together. The end asterisk. Like this video, if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.